Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Friday Night Hangout brought to you by the Craft Beer Nation. It is Friday, December 1, first day of the Christmas month. Black Friday is past. Cyber Monday is past. It's time for you to get off your ass and get the gifts that will make stuff rhyme better than I can rhyme. But anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about New England IPAs. Obviously, ridiculously popular beer style right now. We've actually never discussed this style in the Friday Night Hangout. So what inspired us to actually discuss this topic tonight was a recent podcast that many of us listened to by Good Beer Hunting, where they were speaking about the Haze craze. And you had Wayne Wombles from Cigar City,
Soren Parker.
So I'll let I don't know.
Parker and another gentleman. I forget the other one.
The main part I'm focusing on is Wayne Wombles from Cigar City, and he had an interaction with the dude from Other Half, who was actually in the audience. He wasn't on the panel; he was in the audience, and they were talking about the IPA Haze craze. So we're gonna get into that a little bit, but before we do, I want to introduce you to the panel. Tonight we are joined by my man, the Bostonian and the Hazy, the Puerto Rican Bostonian. Freddie, how you doing, my man?
I'm good, man. Chilling, getting ready to talk about these New England IPAs. And
there's gonna be a lot to be said. There's gonna be a lot to be said, Freddie. I feel it in my bones. A lot to be said tonight.
Freddie, aka Goya,
aka aka Saison. Ethan, what's up, my man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Chilling. Taking it down south, the furthest south that we are tonight.
Greg Jones. How you doing tonight?
What's up, man?
What's going on, Randy? Guys, fellas.
Chilling, man. Skrizzle for shizzle.
Right on.
And the best beard in the land, the Duck Dynasty himself. Just kidding. Just kidding. My fellow Virginian, Matt Hyatt.
Looking super comfy in the couch.
Straight chilling. It feels like it should be stout weather again, but I'm okay with IPAs.
Yeah, it's not that it's gotten cold and it's warmed up, and it's gotten cold now it's warmed back up. So this hoodie is completely unnecessary right now. Just go ahead and put that out there in Virginia. Right. So anyway, Haze craze. Actually, so let's talk about the beers that we're drinking first, and then we can kind of get into the nuts and bolts about this Haze thing, and we can kind of go into some opinions about Haze. Is it a fad? Is it a legitimate beer style? Should traditional brewers disregard hazy IPA as a style? We'll get into that, but at first I want to find out what everybody's drinking. So Freddie, what's in thine chalice?
What up? I am drinking from Brew Gentleman out of Braddock, Pennsylvania. This is their Lou. This is the growler, obviously. It's an 8% double IPA, and I'll show you guys. Fitting, crazy lacing, nice turbid, hazy look to it. First time ever having it. I believe actually what's cool about this brew, actually, I'm not sure what percentage or it's all the proceeds. They go to an ALS fund, hence the name Lou.
So maybe Lou Gehrig, maybe.
Yeah, and but this beer, dude. I mean, I haven't had a beer from them, well, an IPA from them, specifically New England IPA, that has been bad. I mean, all phenomenal brews. This beer is doing it. It's ridiculous, man. It's crazy. These dudes I think they kind of slept on still as a brewery, but their beers are outstanding.
Oh yeah. What part of Pennsylvania are they out of? You know?
Braddock. So I think it's right outside Pittsburgh.
Man, that'd be the case. Pittsburgh is killing it right now because they got Brew Gentleman, they got Dancing Gnome. Is there another one, or is it just those two?
I don't know. It might be just those two.
Either way, if your only two breweries in your city are Brew Gentleman and Dancing Gnome, and you like IPAs, you're winning right now. That's a fact.
I mean, just incredibly well made beers. Super, like the mouth feels so soft and just full of flavor, man.
And Freddie's drinking.
I'm with the Haze craze. Yep, it's the only way, man. You can't even see it. Look at that.
There you go. What logo? What logo?
Exactly.
What you drinking? What you drinking?
Right now it's who'd like to hold my clipboard? Who farted?
It's a good one.
Who farted? This is the pineapple version. This came out last Wednesday. So see this guy here.
Must be nice.
Definitely qualifies as a hazy New England IPA for sure.
Absolutely.
Wait, that's kind of redundant, right? To say hazy New England IPA. One could just say New England IPA.
Suffice.
Right. Greg.
Yes, sir. I'm drinking Shreveport's local Grace and Grit. It's probably the only IPA I have right now. I'm stocking up on stouts, hoping that the weather turns. But it's a double. It's a double, 8%, and it's probably their best beer. It's pretty hazy. It's probably the only hazy one that they really make. But it's a really good beer. I think they did this one with I think it was Mosaic hops on this one. I can't remember.
I see you representing Houston's. You representing Houston's Spindle Tap.
Spindle Tap.
So I decided to do a wardrobe change and rep another small brewery down in Charleston, South Carolina. If you ever get a chance to go to Charleston, South Carolina, make sure you go to West Ashley and check out Charlestown Fermentory because they doing it. Anyway. Hyatt.
So I am drinking on Citra Position. It's a single hop Citra with lupulin Citra as well. By others, it's hazy, yellow. Can't see.
Who brews it?
That's Mystic out of
Boston,
Massachusetts.
Everett, Massachusetts.
Chelsea, Ma.
Yeah,
Chelsea.
Nice.
Oh, my bad. Who's in Everett, Freddie?
Night Shift.
Oh, Night Shift. That's what it was. You're right.
Mystic has been putting out some like more and more. Like they never. I don't even think at a point in time they even brewed like IPAs until like recently, like the last couple of years. And
Yeah, I got another one by them as well. I don't even know what this is, but Vivid Mindful Beer. I don't know if that's like their logo or
Logan.
their logo or whatever the hell. But yeah,
How you like it? What are your thoughts?
I love citrus, so obviously it's gonna be like it's hitting my spot right now. It's perfect.
Nice.
Straight pineapple on the nose.
Yeah, man. And they're fairly new, like I said. I know they're fairly new in brewing IPAs like that, man. So
yeah, I've never even heard of them until actually one of my buddies up there sent it down to me. So
you have other friends besides me out here?
I do have more than one friend, but yeah, it's delicious. It's hitting right.
Hitting it right.
Bet. I'm going semi. Well, I guess local. It's out of the DMV. I'm going Search and Destroy from Burley Oak out of Berlin, Maryland. With the battleship on the joint, and because they search for and destroy enemies. This is triple IPA, 10%. Brewed with all Galaxy hops in the kettle, then dry hopped with more Galaxy and Vic Secret and Cashmere hops. The aroma is just like a I want to say pineapple, but it's more than just that. It's literally like fruit juice on the nose. I had this beer when it was fresh, when it was like maybe a couple of days after it canned. Whereas maybe somewhere around the neighborhood of like a week and change old. And the beer itself has gotten so much better than it was when it was fresh. So this beer is definitely winning. Nice medium mouthfeel to it. That type of fruit juice palate, or that fruit juice aroma that you got on the nose kind of carries over to the palate, but it has a little bit more influences from the bitterness of the hops that that kind of mute a little bit. But this beer is drinking really well right now, and it's, like I said, much better than it was when it was fresh. So can't ever be mad at that. So that said, now that we got what we're drinking out of the way, Freddie, the New England IPA, man, do you think Do you think this is a fad, or do you think it deserves its own style category, kind of like how black IPAs, which I think are ridiculous.
JCB.
But yeah,
yeah, I think it deserves its own category. I do not think it's a fad, but it's been going on for quite some time. It's not like you just seen New England IPAs being brewed in the last 1 or 2 years. They've been out for a while. Every year they seem to, people keep claiming that they're going to fade away, and they keep getting more popular because more breweries are brewing them. And that should say something alone, right? Because especially to the fact that you have not only for like major barrel-aged stouts and all these big high ABV beers, but people are standing in line for hours in some places for New England style IPAs. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's ridiculous. And I think it's also ridiculous to say that, excuse me, again, like the whole fad, like at some point you got to draw the line in distinction and say, okay, it's not a fad. Like no one, when people are drinking lambics and lagers and steams, IPAs eventually were looked at, period, as a fad until they weren't.
Right. No, and well, here's the thing. I think that even with like today, okay, this is a perfect example, I think, in my opinion. Gozas, right? Goza is a style that literally almost died until, I don't know who brought it back. Maybe it was 1809. They brewed that Goza in it's like a weirdly shaped 22-ounce bottle. Maybe it was them. I don't know who revived it. But one of the more popular breweries that started like making Gozas a big deal, one of the earlier ones that I can think of is Westbrook, when they came back with their Goza in the white can, right?
Yeah.
But nobody was saying that, oh, this is just a fad. It was an established style. It had roots that went back really far, and it was established. So nobody kind of wrote it off as a fad. But at some point, Goza was new. Goza, that style was a new style of beer. So now you got this New England IPA style, and you got people coming in saying, "Oh, it's just a fad of the past." Well, what? We need to examine what makes something a fad, because this style of beer has been around, in my opinion, for a little too long for it to just be considered a fad. And I don't see the current rate of enjoyment of this beer and the expectations, how the expectation for this beer keeps going up. I don't see where one can consider it to be a fad when its popularity is still on the up.
Why? But also, to that point, why do you think that? And this goes out to, just as a question general to the panel, I guess. Why do you think some brewers, for instance, if you listen to the what's it called, the podcast here, a good beer hunter, if you listen to that, I believe the episode was called Haze and Confused, for those who are watching or may watch, want to check it out. But one of the panelists on it was I'll just say it, Wayne Wambos from Cigar City. He was speaking to the effect of it's like poor brewing and flaws, and like it's something that shouldn't be done, and kind of just frowning upon it. And I believe it was Sam, I forget his last name, I think his first name is Sam, from Other Half, who stepped up, was quick to grab the mic and be like, "Hey, I think that he took it as disrespect. Like, it's not that we're brewing bad or we don't know how to brew or we're brewing flawed beer, So why do you think that brewers still like come with that notion, like perceive that to be?"
And Ethan and Greg, hi, feel free to jump in, but
so
go ahead, Ethan.
I think that with a lot of the traction with this debate about New England IPAs, it's kind of like there's a parallel between like old heads and new heads in hip hop. How old heads that listen to hip hop hate new hip hop, and it's the same argument. Oh, it's a fad, it's a trend, it's gonna go away. So there's a lot of parallels there. But I had a discussion with a brewer, or a debate, or whatever you want to call it, saying that it was lazy brewing, and I've heard that, and it's just like you sound bitter because you're not doing it. It's always people that aren't doing it, so it's kind of strange, and it's kind of hard to take them seriously because they just say, well, it's not classically trained brewing, which, yeah, okay, great, we all know that, but at the same time, like, numbers don't lie, people standing in line lie, like, it is what it is, you know what I mean?
I'm gonna say this. There are some classically trained brewers, mainly, Matt from the Vale. I can't remember his last name right now, but from the Vale down in Richmond, Tarpley. This dude is classically trained. He's a classically trained brewer, and he's brewing some hazy beer. And Ethan, I think you bring up a good point. It's all about like generational perspective. And to tie that to what if you haven't listened to that podcast yet, I mean, I'm not in the business of promoting other people's podcasts, but this one was a particularly good listen, especially on this topic. But Wayne and God bless him, I love Wayne. Wayne's a good guy. Wayne's been on our show twice. Wayne is good people, but Wayne is not. But I'm not gonna say but because that makes it sound like it's a flaw. Wayne is a technical brewer. They don't put out hazy IPAs at Cigar City. Wayne went into a long discussion about how they got some New England IPAs and they did an extensive amount of lab analysis, and they talk about parts per million of like hop particulate that was in the beer and all this other stuff. Protein, and he went super technical approach to this particular style of beer earlier. Super technical approach to this style of beer right here. And the fact of the matter was, to the credit of the guy from Sam from Other Half, he was like, yeah, you care about those things, but the people drinking the beer, they don't care about parts per million. They don't care about how much yeast is left in suspension. It's my opinion, and I can't remember who said specifically in the podcast, but they kind of alluded to a premise of this argument, right? They said that this particular style of beer, it's an expensive style to make because there's the hop utilization. Admittedly, for New England IPAs, it's poor. It's poor hop utilization, so the beer ends up being a very expensive beer to make because you're not extracting as much as you could out of the hops. But it's not like it's poor extraction; it's just of the hops. So I think that a lot of the hate for this style comes from big brewers because if they were to put out a massive batch of beer or a massive batch of New England IPA to put into production, it's almost cost prohibitive. And they also talk about the shelf life that I was going to just bring that up. Yep. On this beer New England IPAs don't have shelf life, and I'm like, well, like almost all the New England IPAs I get, I really hold them for at least a month, 5 weeks.
Me too.
So you can't say they don't have shelf life when almost everybody in here has held a New England IPA for 5 weeks because they knew that it was going to get better. Mm-hmm. So that whole shelf life argument, in my opinion, jive. And to the point again, I think it was I forget his name. I think it's Matt from the guy from Modern Times, one of the brewers. He said, he's like, and why? He's like, at that point, shelf life, what does it matter? Because all these breweries are selling out immediately from the brewery. Exactly. He's like, they're not sitting on. It's not sitting on shelves. It's not. Right. It's not sitting out in the open, in the warm, under lights, etc. Where no beer should, it should be intended to be anyway. Yep. So it's selling straight. They're selling right to the consumer. So that doesn't even matter. Even if the beer was to not be out of the tap room to the consumer, if the New England IPA was held properly, like all beer should, no light, cold temperatures. So
absolutely,
shelf life argument is bullshit in my opinion. Hi, what are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, so going back to like what Ethan was saying, like a lot of the old heads, like people were drinking, like Pliny was like a flagship way back, and then it kind of migrated up to obviously New England with Hetty. and it got a lot of hate, but it was based around that, like the clarity of it. So Piney, you can see right through it. It's clear as day. You use centrifuge and try to get any particulate out of it, and then you get this New England brewery that brews something like hazy. You can't see through it. You stick your finger in it, you can't even see it. Yep. So I mean, I think they get a lot of backlash, but I mean it practically started like a beer revolution as far as different styles of IPAs. I don't know how long from when Hetty started coming out, when everything started blowing up. But I mean, it's just been like it took off, and I mean, crediting to, was it John? I mean, I don't want to say he started the I guess the change of the revolution, but I mean, it definitely played like a huge part in it when people hate that in California, it seems. So they don't have their clear beer.
Yeah.
It's just funny because Sam Richardson, that was his name, Sam Richardson from Other Half. He kept like, it was funny because he just kept grabbing. He's like, give me the mic, man. I got things to say. Because he told Wayne, he was like, because they're talking about brute flaws. Like, he just brought that whole point about the centrifuge, and that was the topic towards the end. And Sam Richardson clearly told him, he said, just because you're putting your beer through a centrifuge doesn't mean that you're a good brewer or that you have these techniques.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't take someone with, it's not part of the art. Just because you're filtering your beer and it's coming out clear doesn't mean that you're brewing it like, specifically like, wow, that you got all this skill. Basically saying it doesn't take all this skill to push the beer through a centrifuge.
Right. Just because you can afford a centrifuge, or just because you can afford Werflock tablets or Werflock period tablets or whatnot, that doesn't make you a better brewer. You know what I mean?
I think
Greg, you got some.
I think the thing that I took away from the podcast when I listened to it was how exactly what you were saying, Randy. The guy was saying that it had poor shelf life, and as you said, most of them are almost a month old before we get around to them if we go to the brewery and buy enough of them. This one's right at a month. This Grace and Grit, and it tastes as good or better than it did, the day that I got it. The other thing was the guy was saying that those beers in a lab showed that they had too much lipids, too many proteins, and all those sorts of things. And he also said there were better ways to brew this beer. And the thing that I was waiting for him to say was, or someone to challenge him with, well, brew it then, show us, make it, be hazy, make it look like what the customer is after.
Actually, yeah, someone did, yeah.
But do it in this great manner in which you say you can do it, without the lipids, without the proteins and everything like that. Because I think it's just, and I hate to fall into the category of exactly what Ethan said. A lot of the younger hip hop artists or musicians, I just can't get into what I call mumble rap, and that's what I hear a lot of people call it, mumble rap. I like more traditional in what I came up on, but this is a newer style. But for some reason I've just migrated to this. I like this style more than I like, I'll just say West Coast IPAs. I like it hazy.
Yeah, and I think that the point they're all missing, like Garrett Oliver, like the dude from Cigar City, is like you're such a small segment of beer consumption in the United States. And I know a lot of people that have transitioned into craft beer because of the way those IPAs are made, the way they taste, the whole juice thing. So I think that if it were me in that situation, fighting for shelf space, trying to fight off, larger macro brewers, things like that, it's like this is something that's helping build what you're a part of, and ultimately is going to give you sustainability. Why not, if you're not going to make it, at least embrace it, because that's what it's doing. I mean, not wholly, but a lot of people that I don't drink beer, well, they do because Northeast IPAs exist.
My whole big thing is just it's the whole fad thing again. It's like why is there not, if it's such a big issue that they're making it seem like, why is there no room for the New England IPA? Like there's limited space for amount of space for beers styles, and that's it. It has to stop at a certain place. Like why can't there be, like one of the guys said the same thing. It's like that's part of craft beer, to push the envelope, to experiment, especially like that. And that's just it's also fun for the consumer, and it's fun for the brewers as well. And what happens? Imagine how dull things would be if people just didn't push the limits and everyone's drinking the like, not that it's not wrong traditionally, I guess, because you wouldn't know, but if we all just drank Pilsners every day, we all have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
You get tired if there's no variety, man.
I think too. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. How you got it?
Yeah. So, like, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, and Nathan as well, with the clarity. I mean, your BJCP is based on appearance, and that's like, I don't think it's like huge. Maybe it's like 3 to 5 points or something, like something small, but I mean that's still a decent amount of points that you can lose if your beer isn't to the style, which an IPA
the right SRM.
Exactly. So your appearance, your right color. I mean, it all depends. I mean, that's points you could possibly lose based on a style that doesn't exist. So you're brewing to an IPA style, but what is an IPA even supposed to look like? It's supposed to be clear. It's supposed to be a certain color, certain SRM based on your grain bill. But I mean, it's a tough one. Like, you're gonna lose points and potentially be like lose a competition or lose like a crowd if it doesn't look appealing. It's tough.
I'll say this. Prior to the British being in India, hops were relatively lowly used. And there was also a point in which hops weren't used at all in beer because the Reinheitsgebot said that beer was water. Hops weren't added until later on. So my point in saying this is that at one point, the addition of hops into beer was probably considered to be radical.
Like what's it called?
Gruits. Right. Essentially, they weren't right. They were gruits, beer without hops. So this approach to beer, the New England IPA approach to beer, utilizing hops in a different way. I don't think that traditional brewers and not macro, but big craft breweries and stuff like that, I don't think that they should hate on it because it's just it's still beer. It's just a different approach to it. Nobody's complaining about the fact that we're fruiting the shit out of saisons. Nobody's complaining about the fact that we're fruiting the shit out of gozas. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's complaining about the fact that we're adding adjunct upon adjunct upon adjunct to stouts. Because there's only so far you can go before you get a coconut, cinnamon, red pepper stout. But nobody complains about it. They love it. It's still beer. They're just taking a different approach to it. And I think that happens to also be the case with the New England IPA. It's still beer. They're just taking they're playing with hop utilization. They're playing with different yeast strains. To Freddie's point earlier, I just feel as if the American craft beer spirit has always been about rules and doing what we want, right? Fuck the rules. Brew what we want to do, and that's what's going on with this style of beer. But so many people have so much to say about it, and in my opinion, that's incredibly unfortunate.
Like, there's a place for all the styles. It's not like I don't think any of us are saying that the West Coast IPAs, there's something wrong with it, or again, traditional saisons, etc. So they all have their place. It's like, right. It's not, you know what I mean? So I mean, fuck. If numbers don't lie, and a specialty IPA is a rye IPA, a black IPA are accepted, and numbers don't lie, then simply do the math on how many breweries are selling their black IPAs, and look at all these New England IPAs that are being sold by other breweries, and tell me who's winning. In fact,
Freddie, not just that. I'm gonna use Sierra Nevada as an example. Every year, I buy Celebration when it comes out because I think Celebration is a fantastic IPA. I love that beer, right?
I bought some already. Yep, this year. Yep.
Sierra Nevada has another beer, Hoptimum, that comes out every year, and I think Hoptimum is a fantastic beer. He's lining up to buy Hoptimum or Celebration. You let Veil drop a dope IPA. You let Trillium drop something dope that they've never done before. They do a collab with Monkish. You let Treehouse drop something. You let Aslan drop something. You let Hoof Harder drop something. You damn near got to get tickets to go to the release to get the beer.
To get dinner.
If it was a wax style, or if it was just a fad, why is it outselling
all these other ones? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? On a I guess the right term isn't per capita because we're not talking about people here. But relatively speaking, if you take what Sierra Nevada does on their massive brewing system, and you take what a lot of these other New England IPA breweries do, their relatively small brewing system, and look at how the Sierra Nevada has to involve a middleman in order to sell all their beer. Vale, Triple Crossing, Aslan, Anta, Trillium, Farted, Greg, down to your neck of the woods, Parish. They can sell all the beer without even involving a middleman.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's how can this style be? That's what I'm saying. Because not only are the breweries making money because now they got bigger margins because they're not involving a third party between a third party. They got bigger margins. These breweries can make money and they can make more of this beer that we like. So not only is that the case, but also you have the consumers. Because obviously, if you're gonna wait at Treehouse, you're gonna be in line for 2 hours for the amount of beer. Nobody does that for something that's not dope. And the fact that people are doing this is that in and of itself is a reason enough for me to say that it's not just a fad. It's not just something that's going to go away here pretty soon. It's legitimate. It's here to stay because the people who are drinking the product are speaking with the money. I understand that brewers not as technical of a beer because there are some bullshit brewing inconsistencies that I happen to disagree with. I'm not a brewer, so take that with a grain of salt. But to Freddie's point, numbers don't lie. People's palates don't lie, and they're gonna buy what they want to drink. And if you can't give the people what they want, then hey, you gotta deal with the consequences of such behavior.
And to your point, and your credit, Randy, it's not even like it's a one-time thing either. Like these breweries are pushing out, like Treehouse, for example. They're every single week, every Thursday, Friday, they have a new canning release, and there's still every week there's I don't know how many hundred people visit the brewery, and then you have Vale in Richmond. I mean, every single week you have people lining up. Aslan, same deal. It's like week after week. It's not like it just started a year ago or anything. It's consistent. It's been happening for a while, and I think it's going to continue to happen as well.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. I can't see them not accepting this.
Yeah, I mean, with Treehouse's brand new facility, I mean, it's ridiculous. I think it's here to stay, man. It's a fad, but it's a fad that's caught on, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon.
All right.
Yeah, so I wanna delve into this a little bit more from the obviously none of us are professional brewers, right? But Greg, Freddie, and myself have listened to the podcast, and there's a lot of talk about how this this particular style is flawed brewing. Exactly. I think the premise behind that is like these cats should be on the Chappelle Show at the Haters Ball, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean. Because it's so much hate. It's flawed brewing. You think it's flawed brewing because strain that exists that can be used, which is not something that was necessarily made up. It's a yeast strain that's not necessarily as high as a flocculent yeast strain. Let's say yeast or American ale yeast or whatever. It leaves some beer in suspension. I mean, it leaves some hot particulates, some proteins in suspension. Okay, there's that. You can't just brew a New England style IPA having a particular yeast strain. Chemistry is important. The way you use your hops is important. The yeast strain is important. If you're gonna, this style of IPA is about. It's about the hop, in my opinion. West Coast IPA is about the bitterness. It's about the hop, but it's about the bitterness component of the hops. New England IPAs, in my opinion, are about allowing people to experience the flavor and the aroma components of the hops. Bad thing. That's allowing people to experience a different aspect or a different facet of the hop. So I don't think that it's poor brewing technique because it's not as clear. Because we're using something from nature, the yeast strain, and something that's also already been used in beer, the hops, just in a different manner. And then also the water chemistry, something that's been used in the beer and beer since the beginning of beer. You can't make beer if you don't have water. What's y'all's opinion on? Everybody's thunder just now, but
I'll just say get it out right after that. So, couple parts. Flaw. I don't think it's a flaw when it's done intentionally. First of all,
right. Cosign.
Yeah, it's done intentionally, so it's not a flaw. And to go on that again, it's so much what he said. It's like, why is it a flaw? I guess it says who. Because it doesn't follow a specific guideline that was set by you. Why do you have to, as long as it tastes good to you and the consumer, then it's not flawed. People are buying.
And that's why you got your brewery open. You
exactly.
want the customer
because there's tons of beer that fit the guidelines that are shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just because it's hazy, it don't mean it's good, Freddie. You said it.
I said it before. Yeah. And that was my next point. And not every, if that's the case, not every flawed or not every intentional New England style IPA tastes the same. You know what I mean? That's the story. There's intentions. It's still. I guess I want to say what I'm trying to say. Make it real short is when you add up all these other components, like you said, the water chemistry, the yeast, the malt build. The controlling the pH during mash, et cetera. All that is skilled brewing. It's all that skilled brewing. It's not a lack of knowledge on the brewers or the brewery's behalf. They're doing things with an intention in an artistic way because they want something to come out specifically.
Yeah, I think that the fact that before we went live, Hyatt was like, I love Citra hops. I love Citra hops. You like Galaxy hops. So it's like that's not on accident that people can drink beer, pull those hop profiles and flavors out of the beer and know what to look for. Like that's not all blind luck. That's a trend. It's not coincidence. So that lends credence to your argument, like it's not flawed. Mm-hmm. It's like they do it on purpose.
Furthermore, I'm glad you brought that up because it makes me even think like, again, I'm not trying to shit on West Coast IPAs, but obviously we drank beers that had Citra. We had beers that had Simcoe, et cetera, Galaxy, Vic Seeker, whatever the case may be. To be honest with you, up front, and it's going to sound like a fanboy shit, but it wasn't until the New England IPAs where I started to be like,
I could taste the hop.
Yeah, I can be like, God damn, I love Galaxy. God damn, I love Citra.
Right. Yes.
I would say, man, I like this beer. I love this beer. But I would never sing along and be like, holy shit. Like,
especially when they're dry hopping and just loading it up with the so like
it's just a saturation of that hop. Yeah.
They crush, man. They crush it and then they double dry hop all their stuff. Well, not all their stuff, but just brings out that hop so much more, and you could like tell that flavor profile as soon as you take that first sip, and
it's so important
as soon as you pop that can
of how important the aroma is to tasting. You know what I mean? And that's just added. Yeah. You never. So I never personally. I never would. I've said that back in the day until these were starting to come out.
Look, I don't want to sit here and just cascade a bunch of hate upon the old guard of brewing because I mean that they have their stances, reasons for having their stances, right? But I would just implore them to be a little more open-minded to what beer can be. Garrett Oliver himself has said, I believe in his book, I could be wrong, but I feel that when it comes to food pairing, beer is more versatile than wine. I feel as if the New England IPA lends credence to his very point, more versatile than wine, because we're still pushing the boundaries on what beer can be. We're still pushing the boundary on what beer is traditionally. There's something to be said about it. If you go down to Richmond, Virginia, and you go to the Answer and you get one of their juices, if you taste one of their juices, the concept of beer itself has been flipped completely upside down on its head because you never thought that beer could taste like this.
Yeah, I'm saying.
You are here drinking a beer that tastes like this. I think New England IPAs are just pushing the boundary of what beer can be and exposing people to the diversity that is craft beer. And we don't need anybody, even if it's a stalwart in the brewing community or whatever. We don't need anybody trying to hinder the progression of craft beer and what it can be, because at that point that's when us as the consumers, we should be upset when that begins to happen. Nobody, like, oppression period is never good. Yeah. Right. Rather it be the oppression of people or whether it be the oppression of creativity, that's never good. And I feel like the hate that goes on toward the New England side of IPA is the oppression of creativity because you feel as if people should stay within a particular lane. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome real quick Jeff. What's going on, man?
Papa Bless. What's up, folks? How you doing?
Good, man. You got some thoughts and opinions on this New England IPA argument?
Oh, I have more thoughts than everybody wants to hear.
Do it.
It's a double-edged sword. So it's a double-edged sword. I get where people come from that want to hate on it. I do. Because after drinking 2 or 3 or 4, all that stuff starts to blend together. And that's the truth. I mean, you find very far and few between who can differentiate between a good balance between the malt, the hops, good mouthfeel. And then you start just getting into stuff that's like acidic and it's just like you get heartburn.
But Jeff, let me ask you this though. If you have IPAs, do they not kind of run together after that point?
Well, so all right. That's the truth. I mean, like, regardless of what you're doing, if you're going to do a whole bunch of sours, you're going to do a whole bunch of stouts, that stuff comes together and it starts to build up and it starts to be hard to differentiate between the two. But like I said, I have both sides of this. I applaud the whole New England IPA scene because I think it is a enhancement on the beer scene. I think it's a new page. Anybody that wants to say that style is a fad, that's just the wrong way to look at it, because if you go back 15, 20 years ago, you can say that West Coast IPAs were a fad, and that was never going to take off. The fact that you're doing over 100 IBUs on a beer was ridiculous 15 years ago. I mean, that was just silly. The same thing with this whole idea of like doing the 0 IBUs. That's a marketing fad. And don't get me wrong. I think Vail and all these guys that are pushing that out are fantastic. I love all of them. Brew Gentleman from Pittsburgh, which is where I'm from, one of my tops. I mean, that's my favorite brewery out of that area. But
Dancing Gnome is legit too, just saying.
I'll tell you right now, and this is going to probably cause me some heat. Brew Gentleman above and beyond Dancing Gnome. There's no doubt.
That's your opinion.
My personal preference. Yeah. But no, I think the idea of this, the whole 0 IBU thing, it's appealing to people who are not like craft beer people, and you get them in for something that is what they expect from an IPA, which is West Coast. That's what most people associate IPAs now, or a couple years ago. When they have an IPA, they expect maybe a Sierra Nevada or something like that, something that's really hoppy, a West Coast style. This is bringing in more people into the community, and there's nothing wrong with that. You want that. I mean, that's
Jeff, I think that there are so many. Okay, prior to the New England IPA, prior to that style, right? There are so many people who hated IPAs because they hated bitter beer.
Yeah,
the New England IPA is for all those people who said they don't like bitter beers because, I mean, even though you can get bitter New England IPAs, there is an additional feel. There's an additional focus on aroma. There's an additional focus on taste that these people who previously hated IPAs can appreciate, or we can draw them draw them into craft beer, whereas they previously wouldn't have been interested at all.
So
the hiccup.
No, that's fine. But here's the thing. The thing that drives me bananas about this whole argument is there's the old school mentality. And I appreciate that, man, because like, look, I appreciate ESB, a Pilsner, a lager as much as anybody else. But why is it that we're going to get mad when we're introducing a whole new crowd into a scene that we want to elevate and rise above the quote unquote macro scene? So if you can get more people interested in something, what's the point of shitting on it and like putting it down? To me, this is old school versus new school mentality that has no place. Like, we should just be the consideration should just be like putting it on to the fact that we're introducing people who are not typical craft beer drinkers to a certain style, and understand the local scene wherever you are. If you're in Boston, you're in Los Angeles, you're in Virginia, whatever, you can find a brewery that's producing something that's bringing people in who may not normally drink this style. Why is that a bad thing? Is it because you're so messed up about the fact that it's a new fad, if you want to call it a fad? Because there's plenty of people that call it a fad. But are you mad because you don't think that your product can stand up against a fad at that time? Well, then just produce a better product. Don't go shitting on a business because they've caught on to something that is in the like the now. I think if you're confident enough in your product and you're the guy that's out there making lagers and pilsners, ESBs, you're doing Dunkelweissens, whatever it is that you're doing, continue to do that. Because here's the thing: if somebody's producing this like new hot trend, they're gonna get caught on to the craft beer scene, and they're gonna go and they're gonna expand on that. When I first got into it, I got really into like stouts, and then I got into Hefeweizens. Not the traditional path that I think a lot of people do, but here's the thing. You start going down that path, and you're going to go and you're going to branch off. When I started off, I couldn't stand IPAs. I hated IPAs. I couldn't stand that bitter factor because it was the West Coast IPA thing. But here's the thing. You shouldn't, as a community, like, we have that decision-making factor. We're the consumers. And business owners have a choice. They can decide to call out these so-called businesses for doing a style for what they're doing, or it's because it's a style that they like to make. And here's the thing. I've seen too many people call out businesses, call out breweries for doing the new fad, and then turn around and make the exact same beer that they shit on, which blows my mind, because it's like we get mad. They get mad because there are people lined up outside their brewery for, 3 or 4 hours waiting for a can release. And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, they're producing the exact same thing.
They realize what's considered, like you said, the fad. What's selling and making a brewery money is that so-called fad, and they're just behind the curve now at that point.
It's called get right or get left.
Right.
And I think that's why they don't get behind them. I think they don't get behind them because they're not making that style. And so they're losing that market share. I'm not going to rep for a style that I don't make if it's not going to bring dollars in my door. And I think that's what you get with a lot of the brewers that don't do that style. I can make a clear beer here at the house. I've done a clear beer here at the house. I've not been able to do. I haven't really tried. I haven't tried a hazy beer. So is it harder to make hazy beer, or is it harder to make clear beer?
Greg, I think it's easier to make clear beer because you can use a centrifuge, or you can use Werflock tablet.
I threw Werflock in, and it was clear as day.
Or if you're gonna do a cold crash too. But here's the thing: like, I hate that argument that making a hazy beer is lazy brewing, because that's just not true.
Agreed.
Like, I know these guys who are making the beers. The fact that you want to associate the fact that a hazy beer is a lazy beer is bullshit.
Yep.
Absolute bullshit. Sorry, I don't mean to get all passionate, but this.
No, that's what this is about. This is about. Hey, we're talking.
And I'm not even drinking beer. I'm drinking whiskey tonight. So
listen. I think that a large part of it has to do with they can't necessarily make these hazy beers because they are so big that it's not cost prohibitive. It doesn't make financial sense for them to brew these big beers because of the hop utilization ratio. And so if they can't beat them, they hate on them instead of joining them.
Right. Because it's going to cost them massive. Yeah, the budget's going to be ridiculous.
But if you have a segment of people buying your beer, you got all these other people. I mean, just to lend credence to what he said, it's like you're transitioning so many people into something that they never would have got into. Like that only makes you look, your industry looks better. But like if Freddie's like, yo, I'm having pork chops and I'm having chicken tonight, I'm not gonna send Freddie a fucking hate mail message like, I'm gonna burn your house down because I don't like pork, motherfucker.
But some of the bigger breweries have seen it, right? You have Stone, who's made the Enjoy Bys unfiltered. You got Unfiltered Scoping. You got Lagunitas. I think that's an unfiltered.
Oh yeah, dude, the Lagunitas is delicious.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So the bigger breweries have caught on to the idea.
But I think the whole idea with the hazy style is not. That's not a cross country marketing idea. Like that's local. That's true local. Because the only way to enjoy that is truly fresh off the tap. And I have nothing against anybody that's canning this stuff. But like I recently, like there are beers that are coming out this weekend, and I went and looked up the last time that I had it on Tapped, and I'm seeing a beer that came out in July that people are still checking into on Tapped within the past week, and they're I think there's a lot of the hype train, the choo choo ballyhoo, but here's the thing: people are jumping on this stuff. And they're rating it like 4 or 5 stars because they see everybody else doing it. But in reality, that beer is so far out of date, it's ridiculous. I mean, if I had something from like Hoof Hearted that was produced, back in August, and I'm drinking it now, that's just like ridiculous because that should be drank on tap. If you're gonna do
Jeff, I gotta disagree. I don't think it has to be enjoyed on tap. I think that a lot of these beers get better. There are a lot of New England IPAs that come out that I don't have to drink fresh.
So
I think
here's the question I have for you though: is it because these guys are producing a beer that is being put in production and put into can too fast, and it's still green, and the fact that you can drink it a month later, then it's good, or is it because it's a good beer that actually has a shelf life? My idea on this is just my opinion is that the beer for some of these breweries are being put into cans way too fast, and it is that you can go ahead and sit on it for a month, and you're dropping that massive like green taste off of it. Well, I think
to answer your question, I think you can't discount the fact that this is a product of the land, right? This is much like wine has terroir influences. It's the same thing with the beer, right? You can say that one can make the argument that the beer might have been canned too soon, but you can't discount the argument that this is not an exact science. When exactly the beer is going to be at its peak before you can it. It's not you can't readily identify that beforehand.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, even if you drink a beer that's a little green, we need to get to a point where we can view that as being okay, and we can just wait. Just be patient. Just literally wait a couple weeks and try it again.
Oh, I'm not discounting that.
The thing about like you said, Hoof Hearted, like the funniest thing about them specifically is the beer about from them that people OD about the most wasn't good until a month after it was canned. So I think that just being a guy that drinks Hoof Hearted almost every day, a lot of their beer has gotten, and this is just in 2017, like last year it wasn't like this, but I think that the shelf life of it is quite a bit better now than what it was. You can call it what it is, but I don't think it's inferior per se, because it's not bad.
Oh,
Yeah, I've definitely had like both sides of the house. I mean, you definitely have breweries that are brewing or canning, beer that shouldn't be canned yet. Like, it's definitely green when it goes in the can. It takes a couple weeks to develop, but at the same time, I've also had IPAs that fall off like super hard, and in 2 or 3 weeks. But then you also at the same time you could have an IPA that's like, shit, I want to say 3-4 months old, and it's not barley wine. It's still decent. Like that. I think it all depends on the hop and then the brewery and what they're actually doing. It's too many variables to like narrow it down to what exactly they're doing. But I mean, I've had a 2-week-old IPA that tastes like trash, and I've had a 2-month-old IPA that's like drinking fantastic.
So, but if you look at most of these places, I think the biggest thing you'll see on all the labels is drink fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no disagreement there, but I think that there is a factor of it comes down to production times, what your fermentation cycles are, what you're trying to produce through the brew house, and then so you're canning stuff that probably there. And I'm only talking about smaller breweries. And by the way, when I said Hoofhearted, I'm not like calling them out. That's just like I was throwing out a name. But my point being is that like you have production cycles, you have sales cycles, you have fermentation cycles, and to try to line all that up, sometimes you're going to can something ahead of time that probably you're not ready to can because of just how the whole cycle thing goes down. And unfortunately that happens. But my point being is my personal take is if I have my choice between taking something off a can, taking something off a draft, I'll take the draft every day. If you have that availability. I mean, not everybody has that availability. I'm just saying, like, if you have that availability, Randy, like, you can understand, like, we're lucky because we're in Northern Virginia. We can go to Ocelot. We can go to Crooked Run. We can go to Aslan. Well, when Aslan has a tap room. But we can go to these places and we can actually get that off tap. My personal preference is I'd rather have it off tap than a can.
I'd rather have it off tap versus a can. I'll say this: I don't have a problem holding 3 of my 4-pack for 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 weeks. Even Freddie, JC at Trillium.
Yes.
I can't remember what it was. Maybe it's Congress Street. I think it's been in an interview where JC doesn't prefer Congress Street until about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So the point is we got to understand it's not just because, and Jeff, I'm not disparaging you. I'm not by no means. Let me just put it out there.
Yeah.
Thinking that this whole notion that IPAs need to be had fresh, stop, because they don't. they do not fall off a cliff if you don't have it fresh. Okay,
yeah.
A lot of these beers have a lot of influence from nature, just like how wine does. Get better with time.
Oh, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I was saying though, even though but it goes back to this, some of these guys are canning beers that are still green, which means that it can go. It can go for a month before you're going to really get a good positive taste out of a can.
I think that's marketing too. That's smart marketing too. Tell you to drink it fresh so you drink more. Don't hold on.
So you're going to keep on getting in line for all that stuff.
Right.
But also, I think that's due to certain breweries, I would assume, being so popular. They're cranking out beer, man. And it's not sitting around in this.
Right.
They're turning quick, man. They got to get those beers out of fermenters as fast as possible.
Exactly.
Because to Jeff's point, they got brew schedules.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, you have brew schedule.
Some of the convo, I had to step away. So
But you have brew schedule, but I mean, it's a business, and I think that's the one thing that a lot of people
Like gets lost
in it, man. It's like, this is a business. This is not like one of those things where it's consumers want to think of a brewery, their local brewery, is their brewery, but this is a business. You have a lot of tough decisions to make. Things that you don't necessarily want to do as a consumer yourself, but man, that's tough. That's so tough to just have to go out there and say, you know what, this beer is green, but you know what, we're going to push it out there.
Yeah, because then you talk about a damage beyond the perception of beer. People start looking at you as a brewery putting out bad beer, you know, as a whole. So it's not even bad beer. It's just we as consumers, we gotta understand, and we gotta be patient with, understand and be cool with being patient.
I don't see how it's any different. People like sit on stouts and like cellar them and everything else. So I don't know why a relatively shorter life, like waiting as far as cellaring, like, oh, I waited 4 weeks for this IPA, like, oh, I waited 5 months to drink this. Oh, and the adjuncts might have fell off, you know. So I don't know.
No, nobody drinks a wine and say, "Ooh, this wine is young. This should have had it. This should have waited before they bottled it."
We're on the wrong YouTube channel.
Unless you're just barefoot or some shit like that, you know, like you're doing that $2 chuck from Trader Joe wine,
right?
Box of wine.
So that said, let's go ahead tie a bow on this thing. If you're watching live right now and you wanna get in on the hangout, feel free to hit us up on Twitter at Craft B Nation. We'll be more than happy to send you a link to join the after party. Twitter, you can hit us up on. Don't hit us up on Facebook because I ain't checking Facebook.
Come on, man.
Hit up in the gram. You see the lower third, just hit them up there. Bam.
Yeah, Instagram at Craft B Nation. You can hit my personal Instagram up at it's no longer our Grizzle 2.
Sliding the DMs.
CBN. sliding these DMs at CBN _ our Grizzle 2. DMs at CBN _ Frio. Send you guys a link to join the after party shenanigans where more belligerent and X-rated and do things that your parents probably wouldn't approve of, but nonetheless, it's a good time.
Facts.
So, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to join us next week where we'll be talking about a different beer style more than likely. Do we know what it is yet? Nope.
Sours.
Well, apparently we do know what it'll be next week. We're going to be talking. What you say, Hyatt?
We can go back to Gozes. We were talking about Gozes for about.
I thought barley wine was life. Am I?
See,
am I not,
so you know
what? Barley wine is life.
Look.
Just Alex.
So one thing I can guarantee you next week will either be Gozes, it'll be barley wines, or it'll be sours. Even though I think Goza kind of falls.
Combo of both. We need 13% beer and a
3%.
If I'll say this, based on experience, if we do barley wine, this show will go off the rails.
It's gonna go fast. Barley wine, 2 Gozes, and then
more than it did when I came on board. I feel terrible about that.
What happened to the video is if we have barley wines, if you don't catch it live, you will never catch it again because it won't be
right.
It'll be deleted.
The last barley wine show we had, like 10 minutes after we got there, we were like, yeah, we should probably delete that. And that video never saw the light of day. Jeff, you were absolutely a value add tonight. Don't feel bad about nothing because your opinion was and is greatly appreciated.
I think,
ladies and gentlemen, be sure to check us out next week when it will either be sours or it may be Gozas or it might be barley wine.
Who knows?
If it's barley wines, you want to watch it live because you won't see it after that show. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, remember, until next Friday, cheers.
Bad boy.
Bad boy.